Thank you, guys. Thank you. And honestly, thank you for coming, for listening out to me as well. It's been a crazy journey because I was literally on the same place that you guys were just a few years ago. So it's mad to just come and actually be talking about one of the things that really interests me the most. But I guess you guys are also really interested. That's why you're spending your afternoon here listening to me. So thank you so much, Transcending Taboo. Thank you so much for having me as well. My name is Andre. I work with Drugs and Me. We're a drug harm reduction website and a piece of digital information that we really try to provide a lot of non-biased, non-judgmental information about how to use drugs. And all of this is content about dosage. It's about what to do before you take drugs, when you're taking drugs, after them, taking care of your body and everything. And recently, one of the things that we've done is build a new digital tool. It's an app. It's a Sojourn. It's the beautiful logo that we're developing. And it's going to be working towards understanding and analyzing what a safe and sustainable and satisfying drug experience is. So without much further ado, it's so nice to see you guys. It's honestly so amazing to be here at universities again. Like I said, all the big ideas I've had around drug use and drug policy and all these developments came from hanging out with my university students, from listening to other people, being around a lot of different cultures and different ways of using drugs, be it legal or illegal ones as well. So today I kind of want to go through the drug policy space, how I got in this, and also how these tools are going to have been developed and how we're working towards them, how we used evidence in our research for it, and also how it works. We've actually just finished our latest prototype. I've got some screenshots that I've just been going through yesterday as well. That's why I didn't send the presentation in as well. But those are different things. And how we built a team to make this happen. And hopefully you guys can have some, inspiration from this and anything that you've kind of learned from it. I'm also going to ask you guys one question, and it'll be one interactive period. It'll be fine. There's nothing to be scared of this. And also stop me or ask any questions if you have anything during my presentation. So cool. How did I get here? It's crazy. I was really interested in understanding drug policy and how drug use happens, and through university first in my bachelor's, I came across this concept of the war on drugs and really what is wrong about it, looking at racial discrimination, looking at removing treatment and having people go into jail first before that they could get any sort of recovery or drug treatment, and all these injustices that are done in the name of was really prohibited pleasure at the end of the day. I think that there are some really interesting things that have started to come out of it, but it's this essential injustice of what's happening that really drove me to it, and I think it drove a lot of people to be here. I first got in touch with Drugs and Me when I was at undergrad. I wanted to collaborate. It didn't happen. I wanted to translate a lot of their work into Portuguese. It was a ton of work. There were also students. There was not enough time. A lot of the projects ended up not working out. And honestly, the biggest takeaway I had from that was just to keep trying. If there's something that you want to do, and if there's something that at the heart of it is an injustice that will continue to happen, you got to keep going at it. So I left university. I kind of wandered around professionally and creatively, didn't really know what I wanted to do, had a lot of nice festivals and a lot of nice times with friends, and always had these ideas of how safer drug use could look like, what we could do that is helping others, and what we can do with changing our relationship with drugs. So I started a master's. My master's was in political communication. Because I was still obsessed with drugs, I managed to turn my dissertation into this project about what are the strategies that different drug policy reform organizations use when they communicate to the public to influence public opinion. So I spoke with some of the leading organizations here. We spoke with LEAP, that came here to talk before, with Transform, with Release, with Voltfast, a lot of these different groups, to understand what campaigns worked, what kind of messages work with wider publics. You're looking at issues that talk about how kids use drugs, someone that lost a family member to adulterated drug supplies, and a lot of these conversations that I kept seeing was about the lack of safe supply, the lack of people knowing how to use drugs and knowing how to behave when they consume them, how much to take, how much to deal with adulterants, and how to take care of these things. I then went to work in health policy, and that really consolidated a lot of the work around like how you can actually make change. You know, the pharmaceutical industries and medical bodies and patient associations, they really know how to drive home the problems that both medicine and diseases create, and have this understanding of the patient is someone that has a lot of knowledge and information. So a lot of that information I started to keep having around my head, and I finally managed to work at Release. I don't know if you guys know Release. Release is an organization over 50 years old that's been legally advocating for the defense of people with drug-related issues. We've got a team of lawyers that I'm now working on the communications team. And all of this was just a product of insisting and working as something that I believed in and had to eventually find a way of getting into the industry. So it worked out. I managed to meet the people at Drugs and Me, and they helped me develop, well, we developed together the idea of Sojourn. Sojourn, originally it started off as like a small pill identification AI tool, you know. This is something that already exists in so many different legal pills, you know, and I think that the kind of tech that needs to develop behind you understanding what like a round white pill compared to a large white pill looks like, it's crazy tech that needs to happen around it. And I thought that it would be so much easier to do with ecstasy pills as well. They look absolutely crazy, you know, and it's very easy for you to then trace what they look like, match it with some drug tests that have happened before, locate them, some region of the world, and we can connect with that. So I spoke with Ivan, the guy that started Drugs and Me, and we started kind of brainstorming about what we wanted to have. It's an AI tool, but above an AI tool, like it needs to be something that provides advice to help drug use become, yes, spontaneous and fun, but also something that has some structure. You understand what's going to happen to you. You know or have an idea of how much you should take and what it's going to do to you. And a lot of that comes in from the personalized dosage. I'm sure you guys have some interest in this and understand that if you want to find information on how much you should consume, there's calculators out there, there's amount of milligrams per kilo in your body that you should consume, and all of this advice, it's easy to do, but involves some calculations. And this is also something that we have in apps. We have all this kind of information to make it personalized advice. And also, something that I saw that was really important is just the problem with harm reduction. And this is something that is, it's a bit of a theoretical field that's starting to pop up in drug policy reform, because the harms that drugs create is really important to understand, and still so many of the tragedies that happen around it, and the reason why drugs are prohibited is still because of the harms that drugs create. But we also need to understand why people take drugs in the first place. And it's not to minimize the harms, it's not to minimize the problems, it's to have a good time. It's to have pleasures, and it's also to have different kinds of benefits as well that come around taking these substances. So yeah, these were kind of the general ideas that we had. A lot of these ideas needed to have some theoretical underpinnings. So Ivan and I started kind of working on it, on finding what literature there is out there. And we came across the Zinberg model. I'm sure that you guys may have come across something similar to this. If it isn't this specifically, if you study psychology, I'm sure you've come across this guy because he's like the granddaddy of these things, in my opinion. And also, if you've read The Psychedelic Experience and work around psychedelics, this is a lot of the idea between mindset and setting. So Zinberg was really interesting because he was interested not only in the reason why people have problematic relationships with drugs, but why people don't. And we already have evidence from the UN's big studies in drugs that 9 out of 10 people that use drugs do so in a non-problematic fashion. But so much of the attention and so many of the tools and devices that we have around it develop around the control of problematic use. So looking at this other side, you know, he wanted to understand how have people achieved control and maintained it over the ways that drugs are used, and how they can build, you know, dare I say, healthy relationships with drugs. That it's actually possible. It's something that prohibition has told us it's not actually possible to exist. So he pushed this model about the drugs, the individual, and the setting. I think is something that we can put into our own experiences, the drug being the aspect of dosage, how pure the substance is, whether there's adulterants that are present, how it's consumed, where are you putting it in your body, how are you putting it in your body, and what form is the actual drug. You know, even with something, cannabis is pretty straightforward because you can either eat it or you can smoke it. But a lot of other drugs like ketamine, methamphetamine, heroin, there's a lot of different ways that you can put it into your body, and that's going to impact the experience that you have and the amount that you should be putting in. Setting, where you are, where we are, who you are with as well is really important to see, because that will impact the setting that you're around. If you feel safe in it, if there's something that you can control that environment, if you can be, if you can pull back and go to somewhere where it's warm, it's cold, you can breathe, all these factors that are external to you really have an impact around it. And then the individual, obviously ourselves, how our mindset is, what kind of mental space we're in, what kind of mental health conditions or concerns we may have. All of this goes into feeding the little intersection of this, which is the drug experience, the high. You know, I think high can be a bit of a loaded thing because you can also be low on it, but that's, anyway, the drug experience. The drug experience is really the intersection of all this. From the conversations that I was having before, you know, about this emphasis on harm reduction, on what really people are using drugs for, you have this kind of juggling of what people are really using these drugs for that we need to understand. And this is the interactive moment. This is really exciting. And I want to kind of know from you guys, you know, like what are the benefits or the potential pleasures that people can use drugs for, you know? Do you guys have any ideas about this?
Alleviate stress.
Alleviate stress. Self-reduction is very good as well for any kind of like mental health concerns that people have. That's good. Any others?
Just having a good time, like at a party.
Yes.
Things like that.
Partying, dancing, you know, any kind of hedonist pleasures that people have with others, you know. People can be using drugs to self-medicate, to improve their cognition, to relax, to sleep a bit better, to have a ton of different things that may not even be defined yet because of the way that we've limited our understanding of drugs, but we're still looking to explore what that relationship is. So we've kind of built this idea, you know, of the benefit harm management, moving away from just harm reduction, but also understanding how can we maximize or understand the benefits that drugs bring us. Hence the benefit harm management model. And I had to put this Forbes article just because I have like a very strong opinion about this. If there's drugs that are reported on Forbes, it's no longer cool. It's no longer radical. They talk about microdosing and all these big things, and like these tend to be the only ways that drugs then start to be accepted in society. It's only because they have like a productive value, because they improve your career or they have something about it. That's fine for some people, but I don't think that drug experiences need to be productive or need to have an outcome at the end of the day. Sometimes you can just be having a good time and that doesn't need to develop into your career or not. That's the end of my rant around this. So yeah, so people can use drugs for pleasures and they can use them for benefits. Now, these next few slides are going to be about some of the research that we did for Sojourn to understand really how these drugs are used by people that use drugs. And we interviewed a few of these people from around the world that the only thing that they had in common was that they've used drugs enough times. And we were asking about quite a lot of these features that they would like to see in drug experience, in tools that help you understand and analyze your drug experiences. And we kept seeing the same concerns that pop up. Personalized dosage info also ties in with the safety advice, is understanding how much you should take to feel a certain way, how much is too much, and what should you do in these moments, and keeping control over these things. A drug taking calendar I found hilarious because this is one of the common concerns that people have around drug use. And when you ask them, how much have you been consuming of something or that, like, man, I don't remember. I have no idea, you know, maybe it was last week or it was last month, you know, like and it makes sense, you know, there's currently no way of you actually tracking this kind of information. And interestingly as well, helping me control my drug use, it's a very important feature, but it's also was quite low in these priorities, which I felt like it kind of promoted this idea of the benefit-harm management, but also still respecting the harm reduction aspect of it. On the worries when people were taking drugs recreationally, I think it was really important to talk about purity and the contents of drugs. This is something that unfortunately digital tools can't stop, but you can create a mechanism to understand what to do in case that there is adulterants and how you can test drugs as well. The fact that there is adulterants and problems with purity, this is a fact of prohibition and something that we're actively working against. And I heard that DNA is also providing drug test kits and working towards having that, which I think is fantastic. Developing a dependency to a drug also impacts, again, from the Zinberg model, looking at changes in your settings, perhaps, your individual mindset. All of these play into your relationship with drugs and how you will then manage it and understand how it works. And the long-term harm of drug use, that I think is going to be that's the million-dollar question in drug policy. If we can understand why people fall into problematic relationships with drugs and what they do to your body and they do to your mind in the long term, I think is really difficult to crack. And again, you need to develop tools around this. If you're not tracking how it impacts you without putting bias and problems on people, you'll never know what it's actually doing to you. And then the trust of sources. This was some research that was done as well with Drugs and Me. As a platform that does unbiased and referenced information, we really saw that people respond really well with stuff that is well-referenced, that is authoritative, that can say things with confidence. If you've been in university, you know that you got to reference stuff and you got to have a bibliography, and it's important to have both of these things when you're providing advice, especially when it's advice that is usually going against what the public health system is telling you. Personal experiences was really interesting to see, as well as something that was important, because I think people like to have relatable content, but also like to customize the content that they're with. Having the references and the scientific approach, these were all kind of interconnected. Looking more specifically at how tech and drugs interlink, 90% is always a big number to have, you know, and I think that it's also a big statement to say that you can adapt and you can improve your relationship with drugs, with tech. But I really found some of these quotes quite interesting, you know, and this big one here, you know, that there's no reason why it shouldn't work with recreational drugs, especially because we've got such a symbiotic relationship with tech. And as much as you may be against like always having your phone with you or having to be always super interconnected, this is just a facet of modern life. We're always going to be connected to these things. So you might as well use the technology that you're having for subverting the way that things currently work in, and for something that is going to benefit yourself and the other people that you care about, which for us is people that take drugs. So yeah, this was kind of the research. A lot of this work was just done preliminarily, and then we started to kind of build a team together for it. This is our team. It's really small. It's very dedicated, and I think that was such a big thing to have. It's much better, I found, to have like a small team of very dedicated people that are willing to put in the hours per week, rather than rely on a lot of volunteers that may or may not be participating, and then they come and they go, and then you have to recruit them. That can be quite complicated. So Ivan, he founded Drugs and Me, I think in 2016 or 17, but he joined this project early on with me. Lex is based in New York. He is the mastermind behind our whole software development. He works crazy hours and is absolutely fantastic with all the work that he puts into it, which is amazing. And also working from across the Atlantic is really quite commendable. And we've recently had Vera join us for this second part of what we've been building with Sojourn, because the app now needs to be tested with people, how people are actually involved with the research that we're putting in, do they like what we're building, and then what are we actually going to be able to do with the data to have some serious insights. She's also our most recent member, and it's been really nice to be able to have her there. She's based in Berlin, and so is Ivan now, and we all managed to go to Berlin to both work together and have a good time, but I'll talk about that in a second as well. Yeah. And this is Sojourn. This is the app that we've been building. these are just some screenshots on the way that it works and some of these ideas that we were putting together. This first screen here on the left is how you can actually record your drug experiences, that you can put the different substance that you're putting into it, when you actually used it, even if it's in the past. It doesn't have to be something that's tracking live. It can be a past experience that you've remembered, that you want to get it down, what the dosage was, how you actually consumed it, and what its form was with. You can see again the Zinberg model having who did you take it with and in what environment you did. These are then different factors that you're going to be able to filter by when you're looking at analyzing these drug experiences that we can both do to create insights about everyone that is using the platform, but that you can also look at when you're consuming drugs. This screen here is looking at the experiences when they've actually been logged. So after you've actually had one of these experiences and you've reflected on them, from this screen, it moves on to this one. And then you can look back at the experience, how long it lasted, and that is also something that can be edited in case you've left it running for too long, and just a reminder of how much you took and how much it actually impacted you. So a bit more, it's got, we've also got some passive information that this has been powered by Drugs and Me. Drugs and Me have been building since 2016/17 all this evidence of unbiased, non-judgmental advice of how to use drugs, which you're able to access from the app. This is going to be something that you can do offline as well, with shortened tips that when you're about to take drugs with some friends, you can just access this information, that you just know how to do it and how much you should be taking in these moments. It's also important not to be having tons of text and a lot of information, so that this information is just something that's clear, so you don't have to sit at home and do the research. You can just do it there on the go. This screen was what I think was the most interesting about the research that we could go past. I think that a lot of drug use can happen in a bit of an unstructured manner. And what I mean by unstructured is that there's no real ways of you right now reflecting on how drug experiences are impacting your mind and your body and your surroundings. So basing a lot of this information on what is now a lot of the psychedelic and psilocybin trials that are being done at Imperial College, a lot of this information we picked out and started building all these psychometric tests as well, that you can compare on many different dimensions how the drug experience impacted you before and how it impacted you after, so that you can see where, depending on your location, who you were with what dose you took, how it impacted you on all these different dimensions. Beyond the information about an average dose, the maximum dose that you've taken over a certain period, when you took it, and all this then is relayed in your drug log, all the experiences you've consumed. All of it is accessible from a very nice and easy to read home screen, and all of this screen will tell you by today, by a certain period of time, by a week, how many drugs you've consumed in that time, how you can actually complete some of the experiences and reflect on them, and how they've impacted your mood throughout the examined period. You also have a calendar feature, which was one of the big concerns that we saw. The color coding here works according to the drug category that you're taking to understand whether there's an interaction between different substances that you have. There's also going to be a feature about personalized health advice that will give you push notifications on whether there's a dangerous interaction that you have to be looking out for if you've been consuming, for example, cocaine and ketamine, if you're on SSRIs and you're going to be taking psychedelics or any amphetamines. All this information can be displayed through the app, and be pushed onto your phones, whether you like that or not. So like I said, we had a really nice team building moments in Berlin. It was like the first time that we all met in person after we've been working for almost 2 years. It was really, really fun. Berlin is a fantastic city. And it was, this was like the headquarters, you know. It was a room where we just sat together for a week. It was a bit intense and a bit mind-blowing at times, and I really just needed to go out and catch some air at times. And we filled up all these balloons that were the different work streams, and one of them was calendars and the other was features, and we would only pop them when we actually finished any of the features that we were working on. Like, it was such a nice time to be like actually working together with people that you've known for so long, but you don't really know much. As I'm sure you guys know, like, knowing someone over Zoom isn't really a relationship if you're having to mediatize it. And we had a blast. And I think that was really important, you know, because if you're not having a good time, then there's really no point for you to be involved in something that can be as fun as this. So yeah, I really found that all of this work was really good to start off planting the seeds of it at university. I found it a really beautiful place to be brainstorming a lot of these ideas and meeting people like you guys, like everyone here that is trying out things that you may have never tried before, and understanding how this can then be fitting into your wider life. And I think that my kind of career path has been a bit unconventional at times, and I've definitely had a lot of dramas and having to face some stigma around drug use and drug policy, and wanting to work in this area that has a lot of stigmas around it. And I think that is very rewarding and tiring to challenge that, but also rewarding to then finally be able to feel accomplished and in reaching a point where you actually have a good that you've created, like Sojourn. And having the knowledge on how to use drugs safely and being able to work on disseminating that has been really interesting. And I think this is work that we can all do by pulling from different academic studies and making sure that the information that we're working on about drugs, about how to use them safely, doesn't just stay in academia. So much of our work ends up being pulling through multiple journal articles of guys that did research in some different country, that this information just hasn't reached people that actually use drugs. And if they don't have access to the internet, if they don't have access to a smartphone, they're not able to pull out this information. So we have a big duty of pulling it out, of doing the research, and then making sure that we can share it out and make it accessible for people. And finally, like a note on kind of the biggest enemy that we've had in the world of drug policy, which is prohibition. This fact that you can't use drugs and you can't discuss drugs in an open manner. It's a really large encompassing monster, not just of policy, but of attitudes, of injustices, again, in society that are happening, that you need very innovative responses to challenge it. And so much of what we've seen with Sojourn, a lot of the work that we're doing needs to be conditioned by, is this app going to get approved? Are we going to be seen as encouraging or facilitating drug use? The fact that you need to navigate this environment is so tricky for you to then actually be able to deploy things. I don't know how much you guys know about some certain Facebook groups called Sesh Safety, or a lot of these other organizations that have set up on social media for drug harm reduction information. They just get deleted from Instagram. They just get deleted from Facebook because they're promoting drug use or they're allowing people to sell drugs. It's such a reductive argument that we need to find new ways to challenge, and that as we challenge them, we build new ways of working with drugs. So yeah, that was kind of it. I kind of have a little point that I would like to add with you guys, and I would really like to share this with you guys as well. We're kind of still building Sojourn, and we're still understanding how it's actually going to be developed. If you or anyone else does use drugs and they're interested in getting involved in this project, we'd be really happy to have you guys and people with it. We're looking to start some focus groups on just understanding how drug use happens, playing around with Sojourn for a bit, seeing what features you like, what features you don't like, what actually works according to you, and we'll just be giving out some free drug test kits as well for your participation. It'll be like a couple of hours one day. It'll just be a nice informal and confidential chat as well. We'll keep it always anonymous, and this isn't going to be shared out as well with anyone. So yeah, if you're interested, just let me know, and thank you so much for listening to me.